Let's go to Ukraine, where this week could prove to be one of the most pivotal in the almost year-long war with Russia, given the West's new commitment to send modern battle tanks to Kyiv. It's also been a big week in the country's day-to-day politics, as President Zelensky, elected on a pledge to crack down on corruption, removed a number of key government figures accused of misusing their positions for their own gain. Now, his government reshuffle came after a number of exclusive reports by the Ukrainian journalist Mikhailo Tkach. Our correspondent in Kyiv went to meet him.
The fresh beginnings of 2019. And a promise by Ukraine's new president to finally deal with corruption.
My election has proved that citizens are tired of experienced politicians who over the past 28 years created a country of opportunities to steal, bribe and loot.
Yet in 2023, Ukrainian politics is once again riddled with those exact allegations. Ukraine's leader has overseen around a dozen resignations or sackings this week. Alexei Simonenko quit after taking a holiday in Spain at a time when most men can't leave the country. Vasyl Lizinski was fired after being arrested for allegedly taking a bribe worth more than £300,000. He's denied it. And Krylo Tymoshenko, President Zelensky's own deputy head of office. He stood down after reports he'd been living a lavish lifestyle.
What's going on there?
Those came from this man, Mikhailo Tkach, an investigative journalist for the news website Ukrainska Pravda.
If the source of the money is unclear, they register things, such as cars or mansions, to their close people or relatives, people that do not have an obligation to declare their property. I think every step an official makes should be clear to society.
Mr. Tymoshenko has also denied doing anything wrong, but Mikhailo's scoops have led to a shake-up across government.
The President's latest decision also shows that such responsibility is recognised at the highest level, that you can't play around with this. We are talking about our country's existence. It is very important.
This has already been a war that has taken so much from so many. And while there is fighting in some parts of the country, in others, people are trying to recover. So when there are claims of corruption once again at the heart of Ukrainian politics, well, the political damage is that much deeper.
Outside of Kyiv, the power has just come back, allowing Ivana's bakery to do business once again.
I don't like it. It would be better if this money went for something good for Ukraine, rather than to someone's pocket. Probably we need to replace all those who are there for many years. They got used to that. It's what feeds them.
Corruption has plagued politics in Ukraine since it declared independence 31 years ago. Now, with the world's eyes on it, along with the scrutiny that comes with receiving billions of pounds worth of foreign aid, Kyiv seems keen to act, or to be seen to. James Waterhouse, BBC News, Kyiv.
Russia's Wagner Group, a private military corporation, is gaining international prominence. The group is active in several countries. Recently, they've been sanctioned by the US for criminal activity, which they deny. Of course, their main operations are now in Ukraine. In the UK, they've been discussed in Parliament, and the government is considering changing the process that allowed the organisation's head to get around sanctions and sue a British journalist here in London. But who exactly is behind the Wagner Group and their war activities in Ukraine? Well, our security correspondent Frank Gardner has this report.
Wagner troops in action in eastern Ukraine, purging this town, they say, of Nazis. These private military contractors, or mercenaries, have been in some of the fiercest battles in the Donbass, fighting tooth and nail for towns like Bakhmut and Solidar. Their headquarters is in St. Petersburg, the same city where President Putin worked for the KGB. But their forward operating base is down in southern Russia, reportedly at Molkino, close to a Russian military intelligence base. When the Wagner Group invaded Crimea in 2014, they wore no insignia. People referred to them as the Little Green Men.
They were established in 2014, seemingly on Putin's direct orders. as a way to send Russian fighters to East Ukraine while still maintaining an important element of deniability. And in that, I would say that Wagner is in many ways a quintessentially Putinist organization.
Well, since then, their activities have gone global. In 2015, they deployed to Syria, propping up the regime of President Bashar al-Assad. There, they successfully drove ISIS out of the ancient town of Palmyra. In Libya, they're allied to General Haftar in the east, who set up a rival administration to the one in Tripoli. And in Mali, they have effectively supplanted French troops, partly thanks to a slick PR campaign, like this poster praising Mali's military ruler, Colonel Assimi, and President Putin. Some propaganda goes even further, like this anti-French video, portraying Wagner as the partner that African countries can rely on. In the Central African Republic, they've been providing security for the president, and they're in Burkina Faso and Sudan. But in Mozambique, they got ambushed by ISIS and took heavy casualties.
They were pushed out quite quickly. It was a months-long deployment, very short while. Islamic State was able to take on vast swaths of territory to a point where they were able to seize Palma, which is a rich oil-producing area, one of the big gas towns.
But it's really in Ukraine's Donbass region where Wagner Group has absolutely hit the headlines. They're often more effective than regular Russian forces. Their ranks swollen by 40,000 convicts recruited from Russia's penal colonies and often used as cannon fodder. So, what does a typical Wagner contract mercenary look like? They're often former members of Russian special forces, the Spetsnaz. They tend to hide their identities behind balaclavas or face masks. They're armed with some of the latest Russian weapons and equipment, and they're far better paid than ordinary Russian conscripts. And this is the man who runs them, Yevgeny Prigozhin, wanted by the FBI, a former convict, and a close ally of Vladimir Putin. He grew rich through his catering contracts and is often referred to as Putin's chef. Here's Prigozhin with his troops down in the tunnels beneath Solidar, which they recently captured. And here he is recruiting convicts to serve on the front line, offering them a 6-month contract in exchange for their freedom. But no one surrenders, he tells them, and deserters will be shot on sight.
At the beginning, the Wagner Group was much more professional than Russian army. They used to recruit special forces. Now their main personnel are prisoners.
But this man did desert. Andrei Medvedev is a former Wagner commander in Ukraine. He claims to have witnessed war crimes there, including those who refused to fight, being shot as an example to others. Incredibly, he managed to escape Russia across this Arctic border into Norway in mid-January, being pursued by dogs and armed guards shooting at him. Soon after that, the White House announced it was sanctioning the Wagner Group as a transnational criminal enterprise, a charge it denies. The fighting in Ukraine shows no sign of letting up, and Wagner are an integral part of it. But casualties are so high on both sides that even their boss describes it as a meat grinder. Around the world, Wagner has become a useful arm's-length tool for the Kremlin, and possibly a sign of how some wars will be fought in the future.